Welcome to episode 49 of Posture Labs and Alignment Fundamentals. I can't believe we're almost through this series. I started it at the beginning of the year, so we're obviously going to have 52 episodes. This episode is one of the last ones. It's kind of going to backpack off of last week's. It is Compass Pose or Surya Yantrasana. I don't often use this Sanskrit name, although I do like it. I have a lot of vinyasa classes in my library that feature this pose. I really like putting this and Birds of Paradise in the same class because, as you'll see, they have a lot in common just with the movements of the body and the external rotation of the leg. So you'll see. With that being said, I would not recommend doing this like first thing without warming up. So I would do maybe at least some spinal movement, some hip openers. But I would honestly probably do like a full yoga practice before this, or at least like 10, 15 minutes of yoga with some sun salutations, as you do want your body to be warmed up. And that's why we always put these poses at the end of a yoga class, or, towards the second half of the class once we've done a lot of prep poses. So poses that use the same muscles, stretch in the appropriate way before just jumping right into such a challenging pose. All right, let's get into it. Compass pose, I'm not gonna warm up because the purpose of this video is just to explain it to you, but I would recommend you do. So for compass pose, we're gonna start in a seated position. Now, you can either have one of your legs extended or bent in towards you. Now, I'm gonna start with the knee bent in towards me. So I'm kind of gonna have us set up like we would in Janu Shirshasana. And then I'm going to cradle my other leg. Of course, I'll show you from both sides. So let's start on the right side. So my left leg's going to be on the mat with my knee bent, the bottom of my left foot at my inner right thigh. I'm going to start and cradle my right leg. So what that means is put the bottom of my foot at my inner elbow. My right arm is wrapping around my right leg, and I'm cradling my right leg. Now, oftentimes here, we kind of round our spine, so I want you to push your low back in and sit up tall. What I like to do here is put the right hand off to the right and kind of roll out the right hip like you would use a foam roller. Then this right leg, my goal is to put this up and over my shoulder like I have a backpack on. So I like to grab my right foot with both hands first, kind of push the knee behind me a few times. Just make sure this right hip is nice and open. Then once that feels okay, I'm gonna take my right hand, grab the calf muscle, and try to put it up and over my shoulder like I'm literally wearing a backpack. I wanna get this nice and close to me. I don't want a bunch of air between my rib cage and my thigh. The easier, or the closer I can get my leg to me, the easier it's gonna be to make this bind and turn my chest open. So I really want this high on the shoulder, not a lot of space in between my body. I use my right arm to kind of push my right thigh back. And when I do this from the other side, you'll be able to see. Then I'm going to put my right hand on the mat, but not just in any direction. I want my fingers turned in, so my fingers are almost like tucked under my right glute. Then my left hand will grab the outside of my right foot. I'm going to kick, turn my chest to the left. Now the entire time I don't want to be dumping forward like I'm kind of exaggerating right now. I'm going to use my right shoulder to push my right thigh back, sit up tall, and turn. The low back is going in, and then I can wiggle this left foot closer to me. And release. You want to release, not just like slingshot the leg, the same way you got in. So release the foot first, then remove your right arm. Now, I'll go ahead and show you maybe from the other side what it looks like with the leg extended. So if my left leg were extended straight, this one's maybe a little easier to start. You'll bend your left knee. I like to start in a seated figure 4. So for someone who has trouble getting that cradle shape to start, let's start in a seated figure 4 with the right ankle over the left thigh. Then your right shin is pretty much right here for you to grab the shin and start in that cradle shape. Then again, you could kind of roll out your right hip, even with this left foot on the mat. When you're ready, you'll extend your left leg straight. So now this is a little bit more intense, but as long as you're doing okay here, let's stay with that left leg straight. Again, I'm going to grab my right foot with both hands, push the knee back a few times, open it up, My right hand grabs my right calf. I want to put this leg up and over. So my calf is almost on top of my shoulder. I don't want to be out here. This is going to be really hard. I'm not going to be able to turn at all. I have to get my leg up high with minimal space between my right thigh and my rib cage. And then I use my right arm to push my right leg back. So I'm pushing the right knee back. Right hand on the mat, but turn your fingers in. That just helps with the internal shoulder rotation on this right shoulder. Now my left hand, I'm gonna grab outside grip on my right foot. My goal is I have to kind of thread myself through. So I'm kicking back, my toes are flexed, pointing back. Push my chest through forward and then turn left. As I do this, my right arm, my right shoulder is pushing my right leg back, low back going in, turning chest to the left, maybe even looking up, and then slowly releasing that. I'll go ahead and show you from the front on the other side. So this time let's start with that right leg straight, cross left ankle over right thigh, start in your seated figure 4. Maybe roll out your left hip. This in itself is a really nice stretch. Really nice, kind of if you don't have like a foam roller or a tennis ball to massage out your glute, your piriformis muscle. Bottom of the left foot at the inner right elbow, left arm wraps around, get that cradle shape. Right leg extending, or you could do it again with your right knee bent, the foot coming in towards your left glute. Push your low back in, sit up tall. Grab your left foot with both hands, drive the knee behind you a few times. You know, don't force it. If it's not working out on one side, maybe it wasn't meant to be. You don't need to force the pose. Even though it looks cool, it's not worth the injury. Take your left hand, grab your left calf, put it up and over your shoulder. Nice and high like you're wearing a backpack strap. Left hand down, fingers turned in. Then I want to use my left arm to push my left thigh back, low back in, sit up tall. I have to kind of switch my grip here. So right hand grabbing the outside of the left foot. I'm kicking back and a little left, but my right hand's holding onto the foot. Turn my chest to the right, low back in, left shoulder working, pulling my chest through for 3, 2. My bottom leg is still straight and firm, and 1. Bend the left knee, then release hand, release left arm. This pose is very challenging. I think it's a little easier for me. Well, I do practice yoga often, but I have very short legs. If you had really long legs, that's a very far way to reach for your foot. So just keep in mind that it's not all just strength and flexibility. There's a lot in yoga that has to do with body proportions and the structure of your bones. So just because you can't do a pose does not mean you're inflexible. This is a very challenging one. Again, I would not recommend doing this with no warm-up. I would really, really recommend doing some pretty intense hip openers first, just because as you can see, this is a very dramatic pose. This is not just like a side angle where you have open hips. That's why I put this right after Birds of Paradise, because these often go well together, as you can now see. There's lots of fun ways to exit compass pose. Next week, I'll be going over an arm balance that kind of backpacks off of this class. But in a lot of my vinyasa classes, you can see how I would sequence compass pose in and some of the ways that we might exit the pose. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please give it a thumbs up. Actually, one more thing to mention before I leave is that you could use a strap in this pose. If you have trouble reaching for your foot, so if you're setting up here and my right hand has trouble reaching my foot, I could take a strap around my left leg, hold the strap, and work on that. I just like to give that option. I don't have a strap available, but I like to give that option just to make it a little bit more accessible. I hope to see you back next week, and we'll cover a fun arm balance that gets us out of this pose. Thank you so much for joining, and make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.